Okay, so I think we can start. I will start by introducing ourselves for this seminar on professional higher education at the time of the coronavirus. Threats, opportunities, basically a very wide-ranging seminar or webinar for ourselves here. We have several guests. Some will be panelists and others will contribute. The panelists we have here, I think most of you can see them. I'm pleased to introduce Barbara Broijmans, who is the Director of International Relations at EPEC, which is Haute École in Belgium. Mr. Kostriou, who is the rector of the University Polytechnica of whom we know very well as well, and Dr. Joseph Ryan, who is the CEO of the Technological Higher Education Association in Ireland and who has long been an affiliate at EURASHE. And thank you, all of you. We will be joined by Devanshu Patel of Parul University in India, and Vanessa de Biais-Santon, Head of Unit Commission. Both of them will join us for a special comment, and they will join us later on in the panel. But first, thank you very much for being. I would like to start right away. For the audience, I should point out that I've given no brief to our panelists, except that they really should be free to say what they want on whatever topic, because we all know that the present crisis has really upended our world, changed things in such a drastic way that all aspects, all our brand of higher education have been affected. So can I ask you three to start with the three main challenges that your sector or perhaps your own institution has been faced in the present crisis? And perhaps can I start with you, Barbara, if you don't mind? So I'm not sure we are able to listen to you. Perhaps activate your mute button.
Yes. I'm very sorry. I apologize for this.
Happens all the time. Don't worry. It's part of our new life.
It's part of our new life. So good afternoon, everyone. And thank you for inviting us here and for organizing this. So I would say that the first difficulty was definitely to switch to 100% virtual teaching in one weekend, which is quite a challenge. I would say a challenge definitely for the students and for the staff. So you tell your lecturers on Friday evening that on Monday they will be teaching online, that they have to master new tools, which of course are very well mastered by some of them, but not by all of them. You have to make sure, of course, that your ICT system will hold, because there's also a difference between a normal ICT system where, of course, you have a virtual campus that is used a lot, but when you have 5,000 students on that platform all day. So that was quite a challenge that weekend, I would say. We were very lucky because as an institution, we were already thinking about virtual teaching. We already had virtual teaching, and there were already some testings with some courses which were taught online. And also we have a pedagogical support that is existing, and that has been working a lot during that weekend to get the necessary support for the students and for the staff. We were also, I would say, very lucky because we had already Office 365 all our students were already using Teams, all our lecturers were using Teams, and everybody had it on the machine. So even those who were not used to use the tool, they would have it at home, and it was possible to organize a necessary briefing. And then I would say the last thing is, well, very lucky, because this learning process was an ongoing challenge at that moment in our institution. So I think that was really the main challenge. The second one is also that it's, if you want to survive in this very uncertain period, I think it's necessary to have a flexible management. Because you never have fixed parameters which enable you to take decisions on objective basis. So at one, you have to be able constantly to change your mind, but to have a line, a red line that can be followed. And then I would say that the third challenge, which wasn't the least one, is to organize the virtual examinations. It's one thing to teach online, but then it's another thing to say, now we're going to assess all our students online with, of course, you have the issue of which tool are we going to use? Do we need to use a tool which is able to control maybe cheating of the students? Are we going to invest in that one? And supporting teaching staff for teaching, but then afterwards saying, now you will have to think of how are you going to assess your students in sometimes in a completely different way than you used to, that's also another issue. And it's also it needs yourself to, you have to reflect on which are the essential skills you need to develop with the students and to assess with the students. So these were really the main challenges we faced at EFEC.
You covered that in a very comprehensive way. I understand that when you come to think of it, every facet of your operations was in fact a challenge.
Yes.
So can I turn to Minia Costuiu from Romania and have your own assessment of the managers that yourself and your institution find to face?
Thank you so much, Stefan. You listen to me?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you for this invitation. Thank you for organizing this this webinar. It's very interesting to exchange the perspective of our university, what's happened in this period, the challenge. It's amazing for all university, and it's a very good opportunity to explain in front of people our challenges, our preoccupation. My first challenge, I speak about my personal commitment, is to manage the crisis and to organize the emergency responsible plan, because we have the decision. We decide practically in our university to close the courses before the government decide to have a decision about the universities. And we have a very strong debate in first time in our university about this situation. It's a lot of people talk in the country or also in university about the decision. We don't start the courses. We talk about March, first part of the March. As a rector and coordinator of crisis management, it's necessary to organize daily meetings and will all choose involve of the governance with the university and centralize all major problems. It's very important to know what's happened in the university and have this direct discussion with the people. And I sent many messages in community. It's very important to continue to talk with the community. And this is another challenge, because in one day, like Barbara say, we change all the system. It's necessary that people understand what's happened. We have some problem in first day, I'm very honest with you, because it's necessary to understand what's happened, and the discussion with the national authorities is not very easy, because also the national authority have a problem to manage, to organize the emergency response plan. But after this, we continue to work and realize discussion in the board, executive board of university, like all other university. And very important, we prepare new rules, new rules for teaching. We have our platform, our university platform for learning, for e-learning. Sorry, we don't use enough before the crisis, but now it's full. We use this platform, but it's necessary, repeat, to talk with the community and explain, especially from the students, this new transformation. It's other challenge. It's to prepare the examination. Barbara mentioned also it's different to teach and realize the examination. And because our university is it's a large community, more than 3,000 employees and 30,000 students. And other very important challenge to talk with the students and in the campus, because 50% of our students stay in our dormitory campus, and we have practically more than 16,000 places, and 16,000 students stay in the dormitory. It's a small city in the middle of the city, and it's necessary to manage also this problem and explain it from the students the necessity to close the door of the university and realize that in few days the decision, agree the decision in the board of university, and decide to if it's possible, the students return to home and use our platform to continue the courses. But the dormitory it's open also today. It's necessary to manage this situation, because the more than 3,000 students now stay in our dormitories, 10%, 50% compared with what happened before the crisis. But it's also 3,000 people. It's not easy to manage and talk with these students. And very important, more international students, because it's very difficult, it's impossible practically for many international students to return in home, and it's necessary also manage and talk and explain the new situation in the country. Some students is coming from one semester and have big problems. Last but not least, very important, we create a mechanism to return the Polytechnica students from his part of the sorry, international cooperation to return to Romania. Also, our professors have big problems. Also, our students. It's a very difficult process to talk with the Romanian diplomatic mission, to talk with our colleagues from other universities from Europe and from across the world, to help us, because if we have plane, we don't have car for go to the airport. If we have car with the plane, it's disappear practically, because it's the last decision of the authorities and so on. Finally, we return in Romania many students and many professors. It's also a challenge to talk about this with different authorities. I'm very honest with you. It's not very. It's like a part of our personal discussion, but we talk with church, we talk with priests, we talk with mayor, we talk with different important person in the local, in the small community for help our students and our professor to return home. I mentioned this, but we continue in this webinar to talk about other challenge. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now I turn to Joseph, right? Dr. Joseph, right? Joseph, same question. The three main challenges, or the main challenges you faced, and of course your case is slightly different, as you are more an actor of the professional world rather than a teaching institution. I mean, perhaps you could make this a bit more clear to our listeners.
Yeah, thank you very much, Stefan, and thank you as president of EURASHE and to Mikkel and the executive for setting up this conversation. I think it's an excellent opportunity. I'm delighted to be here, I must say. In fact, so delighted I was, Stefan, that I considered for a moment to wear a tie, but I've resisted that temptation and left it in the press, as has been in the press for the last 2 months. Yeah, TIA is an organization that represents all of our technological higher education sector in Ireland. Delighted so to do, but again, like other colleagues, I'm coming originally out of an institution as a VP for academic affairs. So one can see it from the institutional view, but also from the sectoral view. I'd like in my own comments just to say that you put it very well yourself at the start. This is upending our whole world, and there is something that's quite democratic about this crisis. It affects everyone in the same way. None of us can escape this. And that points, I think, to the role of the European Commission and the role of EURASHE in solidarity, in sharing. And I see this seminar as part of that. But also, I think, as we move to recovery phase, I think there's a lot that we can do at a pan-European level. In the challenges that you ask about, Stefan, I'd like to just pick out the three, but do so perhaps in a way that complements the points that were made by Barbara and Manea. Our Taoiseach, our Prime Minister, announced our first restrictions on the 12th of March. On the 13th of March, we had our first national meeting, and I give great credit to our Department of Education and Skills, our various agencies, our Higher Education Authority and our Quality Agency and others indeed, who came together and effectively put in an interim governance for the post-secondary world in Ireland. The challenge that was related to that is that we've been tackling a moving target all the time. I think Barbara captured that very well. Our first focus was very much on operational. It was that question of just keeping the peace going. You could never say that there was a good thing about a crisis and a dreadful crisis such as this. But I mean, if there was any edge to the cloud, it was the fact that it happened when it did. We were close to the end of the year. So the online delivery piece, we managed to get finished. The focus then went to assessment. And as Barbara has quite rightly said, assessment is a very different matter than the smorgasbord approach that one can have towards online delivery. At the moment, we're looking at the commencement of next year. That's the next big focus for our sector. The second challenge I would head as coordination. You might remember when the crisis first struck us that people were worried about how one contracted this. Did it live on a surface? How long would it live for? There was considerable fear in the population. Notwithstanding that, we had many excellent staff members right throughout the system who wanted to assist. But the problem was that we had requests coming in both nationally and regionally in local institutions. So the coordination of that, notwithstanding the desire of people to support and help and give of their professional expertise, was something of a challenge. We had people who were working on, making ventilators. We had people working on PPE. We had people on contact tracing. And if we were to look back at it, I think coordination around that could have been a little bit more focused. My third and final challenge, Stefan, of the ones you asked me to identify, would be those people who are getting lost somewhat in this. We're aware that for vulnerable students, they actually require that social aspect of being in a place with colleagues. So they were very much more impacted by this and are more impacted by so many of their peers. So putting in a group to look at the mitigation of educational disadvantage was a big part of our national work. Another group, finally, to mention were our research community. Research got somehow a little bit lost in the initial days of this, and it took us a while to get it back in and get it focused and to be able to support those. And we're still working through how we get our researchers back into play as early as is possible, consistent with public health advice. So that's it for my first contribution, Stefan. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Joseph. And I feel I can very much relate to what you've been telling us, because indeed, what is happening to our more challenged students is certainly at some length, because they are difficult to trace. So more we is definitely something to be
Stefan, I don't know if you hear me, but we're not hearing you.
It's correct.
I don't know if you can hear me.
We just heard you there, Stefan, for a moment. Yes, you seem to be back.
Well, good afternoon. Michal Karpišek, Secretary General of EURASHE. I will try to take the floor for a while, but I can see that Stefan is getting back.
Having a co-pilot is very important, Michael. That's what I say.
Yeah, please, Joe, did you want to finish something further? I'm sorry, I have to admit that I was engaged with some other details in the moment of interaction, but
well, we still want to have some challenges in the near future, so we still need to. We haven't gotten enough at the moment.
Yeah.
So still possibilities to improve those virtual tools.
Our concern is, and I really like the point you made, basically all of you, is what we can learn from that. And I think when we discuss that, we still see that it seems to be too early to come to any conclusions. And we believe that we will try to accommodate further discussion among the EURASHE members and the institutions later in the autumn. But still, would there be things which you would expect to be done, the claims to be done within the rest of this year for getting ready for sort of responding to any possible situations like that? Is there anything what you would see as the point for further development, something what we can build on the experience?
I think it would be, well, I think that we will be more agile in the future, and that it's an opportunity also to rethink our teaching methods. Somehow maybe it's not necessary to teach everything in a traditional way, and maybe it's also an opportunity to make sure that when we have a face-to-face with students, that it is more more efficient maybe and more focused on individual projects and maybe on specific skills which are not easy to teach online. I think it's also a way of learning, of maybe having another type of management, and also to learn that things are not for granted in our world. I think it's a lesson of humility also. We sometimes, you know, we are all working a lot and always thinking that probably that we know how to do it, how to manage it. And sometimes there was, well, this case, there were some warning signals and everybody thought, well, it's not going to happen. It's not going to come over here. We are exaggerating. We did not take it seriously, actually. But then at one point we had to. And of course, and I think that, Joseph, you really had a good point. The danger is also that we may lose those students who are less, who are socially weaker. And we have a duty as teaching institutions to develop skills for those students and to make sure that they can develop themselves in the professional world. And I think this crisis, this is the real issue for those students, because they do not always have the necessary tools, they do not have the space to work in a proper way, to be able to concentrate themselves for following classes, and definitely doing exams, taking exams. That's really an issue for those students. A lot of students need to have a job also to pay for their studies and just for their daily life, and it's not possible for them at the moment. So I think it's also an issue, a social issue, this crisis, which, and we are not really, I wouldn't say we're not thinking about it, but we are so much in the operational aspect of everything to make sure that things keep on running, that it maybe somehow it wasn't the first issue we thought about, or our first main concern. It only came a bit later when we realized, okay, that's now we have managed to go to 100% online teaching. We are thinking about assessment. We are thinking about how to organize next academic year. Okay, now we have those students who may not have a computer, who may not have the space. What are we going to do for them? So that's not something we did at first. I think that that's really an issue at the moment. And then I think, well, internationalization as such is also, of course, an issue. But maybe that Mineia and Joseph, you definitely want to add other elements.
That's right. Mineia, perhaps now that I'm back, handing over.
And we're very happy to see you again.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I luckily have a backup connection with my phone, because I think the fiber here is not working properly, which is probably a first, but very unfortunate. So yes, from the Polytechnica.
Thank you so much, Stefan, and welcome again.
Thank
you. Yes, we have also a large debate in Romania about what's happened in the next university year. It's a challenge for us, and depends by what's happened with this crisis. But can we talk about the teaching? It's important to recover our creativity in the term of teaching delivery. And the social role of the university, I agree totally, because we have also problem with some students. We send a message, we talk with each person, each student in our university, 30,000 students. And we wait a message. You have the infrastructure, the computer, the internet access and so on, or not. It's not. I'm very happy because we don't have a large number of students with declared don't have access to in our platform. But I'm also honest with you. Some students don't respond. Nothing. Don't have response from these students. Some students, not large number, but exist. It's very important. And we have students also from the poor family with a lot of problem. Jobs also it's a problem because don't have time for stay many hours in the courses in platform and so on. And repeat the first challenge and the first discussion is what's happened the next university year. Second, it's the social responsibility. And I'm very honest with you, we have problem also with professor. We have some professors who need help for entry in the platform, for stay. We have now in this period, the professor staying home with children in each apartment with many intervention in the we use the computer because the children use the computer, the professor with the same computers, same internet access and so on. And the biggest challenge in the last period is to transform the labs in the technical university in the online labs. It's a also large debate in the university, and not all the people, not all the professors agree this, because to change it is important, but to change tomorrow this and prepare the new labs, because we have also I mentioned also the discussion with our colleague from other university of Romania. We talk with our colleague from medicine university. Also the labs is very important for medicine, not only for technical university, and it's a large debate. And we decide for this year to transform all the labs in the online labs and not face to face for this year. But the challenge and the discussion is what's happened next year. I mentioned the large campus, more than 16,000 places in our campus, and the discussion is what's happened in next university year. It's possible to stay 2 or 3 students in the same dormitories or no? We change the rules. We don't have a response by the national authority for health, Ministry of Health, and some or all the authorities in this domain. But it is also the debate, because if we don't have, it's necessary to approve this decision to cut the number of the students in one chamber, one room. Sorry, we reduce our capacity practically in 1 day. It's necessary to talk about this in front of our students and explain the situation, what's happening in October, if decide or no, we don't know in the moment. And I mentioned another point important. It's necessary in also to and we talk in this period with the students from high school for admission, because usual we have exam in Romania in our university. For many years we organize exam for entry in the university, exam face-to-face in our campus. Now we have also debate about the exam. We organize or not organize the exam. Finally, we decide to not organize the exam. And it's necessary to talk with the professor from high school, with the children's, with parents. It's very important, because we change the rules in the middle of the university year, and it's necessary to explain more about new rules, admission online and other solution for admission. It's other debate, and it's necessary to change more. And I agree with Barbara, with Joseph, and I thank you again, Stefan, and the team for organizing the webinar, because it's necessary to exchange our best practice and maybe our issue, and understand what's happened in your university for maybe adapt the decision in our university.
Yes, thank you very much. Before handing over to Joseph, Mina, what was your solution for online labs? Because I think it's a problem we all have had, are having, and will have. You're right. Do you have a ready-made solution, something you would like to share with our participants? Or is it very much trial and error, as in my own institution?
Yes, it's not easy. It's not easy, and we have very difficult discussion first time, and after this decision, because I'm honest with you, repeat and again, not all the people are, the professor in special is very happy with it, but also the students. Now we change, many professor change the subject and work with students by camera in the labs. The professors stay in the labs and realize the activity. It's one solution. Another solution, change the exam, the exam from the labs with the students, and prepare personal time for each student and the students' response of the simulation. We have also different lab. It's possible the simulation, because entry with the computer direct in the virtual lab and use the machine. It's possible from some labs, not for all, but it's possible this. Mm-hmm. And we work in this period for invest some resources in the online, in the platform, special for labs for next year, because if the crisis continue, we have a problem. Mm-hmm. Yes, it's not easy to talk about 1 or 2 months or 2 months or 3 months or 1 semester. It's difficult to talk about 4 years.
That's right.
In Romania, we have 4 years for bachelor.
As Joseph pointed out, it was reasonably easy this time, because it was the end of the year, and the students knew us, we knew them. But what will happen in September when the new students come in? And of course, distanciation is still very much in operation. But Joseph, perhaps best practices from you, perhaps?
I'm not sure, Stefan, I can offer you best practice. Like everyone else, we are trying things. And I'm struck by the conversation, as I've no doubt you are, about this mixture of the operational focus and then the more strategic piece that Barbara mentioned, looking forward. And I see a question online there, which is really this same question about how one is to tackle the technical elements. If you think of the nature of the education that we as a family in Europe provide, it's very applied by its very nature. And that gave us a challenge. In some of them, we could involve pseudo elements. We could do various, as you say, the sort of mix and mend and make do. But certainly there were elements around labs. There's a big element around placement. And that was very clear. We had elements around placement in areas like social care, in medical area, in areas where we're dealing with vulnerable people, where they could not be completed. There are elements in the creative arts where actual artifacts were locked up on a given day and couldn't be accessed again. So again, in our discussion, we made the commitment very early to complete this year as best as we could, but we were very aware that there may be elements that may have to fall into the start of next year for assessment completion. And equally, we made that commitment to start next year, which is where your question is bringing me, Stefan. My own sense, and the sense I'm getting from the discussions we're having, is we will never go back to the way life was, that we are looking at a very different world. And that brings up this question of what we might call, and I'm using the term in a layman's sense, of blended learning, blended with a small b. So we're looking at face-to-face, but we're also looking at remote learning. We're looking at the public health challenges here about mass movement of students in a place, exactly as Minea says, talking about the dormitories. We're looking at the hygiene protocols as students come into a center. We're looking at the physical distancing And at the moment, we're working on a physical distancing advice of 2 meters. Now, when we do the studies here on a 500-seat theatre, we end up with 50 students or fewer.
That's right.
So yeah, you're looking at the whole concept of a timetable has got to be rechanged. So a considerable part of my morning was talking to one of our key unions, and we're trying to together, collaboratively, to create the new world, and to see how we can respond. My sense of it, Stefan, is that we are not going to arrive at the new world in one step. My sense is that we're going to go through a further period of emergency, even if it's emergency with a small e. We're going to have to try and work something through until such time as the public health advice and perhaps even a vaccine comes into play. And then we will arrive at the new normal, perhaps in a year's time or 18 months' time. Certainly, one of the challenges that we're getting from our union of students who are being very, very responsible and engaged in this governance piece I talked to you about earlier on, the question they're asking is, what does next year look like? And if we go to a predominant, depending on discipline obviously, but if you go to a predominantly online or digital piece, well then the question is, will students travel to engage? Will they invest in accommodation for that? You know, if you say to them, you're only allowed on campus for X number of hours a day and only X number of days a week, then the question is, does that itself bring people to a different set of behaviors? Barbara mentioned the international piece, and I won't delay on it now, other than it's a huge discussion here. But certainly, while students are applying to be in Ireland and want to be in Ireland, that's the key point. They want to be in Ireland. It's not that they want service from Ireland in an online state.
Yeah, that's right.
It's the experience. And that's my final point. I think protecting this idea of the student experience in higher education is going to be a key challenge for us in the next bit. And I know we'll talk about enterprise and our role as professional higher education educators perhaps later on in the discussion. Thank you, Stefan.
Thank you so much, Joseph. Thank you to all three. Perhaps questions from the audience. And you mentioned that, I think it was Niole who, from Lithuania, who asked us about placements. And you broached that subject, Joseph, certainly. I certainly know that in my own institution, we lost hundreds of placements with absolutely no way whatsoever of replacing them without further delaying the students' curriculum and career, as it were. And therefore, this year's diploma for my institution will be, to some extent, will be given without placements, which is a huge problem. That's the negative side. The positive side is we have received considerable support from the professional world for online tuition, online exercises. Somebody in the chat room mentioned pop-up small programs that like a digital oscilloscope and a digital whatever, simulations. So there's this idea that opportunity do exist, although the question of placements and training and the acquisition of competencies is, can I say, in danger, or at least challenged. Barbara, what about placements at your institution?
So we, in our institution, so we have business degrees and we've got technical degrees. So the issue was definitely more for the technical degrees who need to have their placements in labs, or at least to do things practically, to do things with their hands. So we finally were imaginative. So we sometimes, we studied the situation of each student individually. In some companies, it was possible to continue with the internship. In others, it wasn't. And then sometimes we reduced the time of the internship because we didn't want to say to the students, well, you will have to to continue your studies next semester, you know, before getting your final degree. We thought that wasn't right because it wasn't the student's fault after all. It's so we tried to be, yes, I would say very creative. Sometimes we also developed some soft skills and hard skills modules to be followed online. So we really try to find different solutions each time depending on the bachelor degrees followed by the students. And I think that is also the whole issue with this crisis, is that there wasn't one solution for all the students. There wasn't one rule for all the students. Each time we needed to adapt to the different situations of all of them. And that's what's taking a lot of time. And you need to take those, to have some equity somehow, you know, and that's also a difficult issue.
Yes, Barbara, you mentioned earlier that the challenge was in management, being very agile, able to adapt and able to take into account each department that you have, each discipline and yes. each way of doing the teaching and learning. And of course, no wonder the research was certainly, well, taking second seat in our thoughts, I must admit. What I suggest now is we give the floor to Dr. Devanshu Patel, who has a specific, perhaps not keynote, but comment on his experience. Dr. Patel, I see you can now reach us or listen to us. I believe our colleagues at EURASHE will give you the floor, technically, if I may say. So perhaps the floor is yours. Yes, we can see you.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are very much audible. Are you broadcasting from India, Dr. Patel?
Yes, I am broadcasting from India.
Okay, welcome to you. A very warm welcome to you. Thank you for joining us. So the floor is yours.
So, Stephen, what specific point you would like me to speak on?
Well, we were more concerned about the teaching and learning, perhaps the question of how you manage to impart or to convey the professional competencies or the professional aspect of competencies in the students in spite of industry and factory closures, in spite of distance education. Can we have your point of view?
Okay, so I was just listening to all the panelists, and all the panelists happen to be from Europe. But situation is quite different in India over here, where we do have challenges of internet bandwidth. Of course, we have 4G connectivity back here in India, but the internet speed varies in urban and rural areas. So first challenge which we face is internet connectivity. And secondly, universities like us, which are very diverse. We have students from medicine, students from pharma, students from agriculture sector. So another challenge which we are facing is the technical literacy of non-technological background students. And another one is the senior professors. Their technology literacy is also one of the challenge which we faced when we started teaching our students digitally. But speaking about the challenge, what we have done at Parul University and what most of the universities in India are doing, we are trying to make use of different platforms to ensure the teaching learning process continues in this period. We are making use of different platforms like Google Hangouts, Google Classrooms, Microsoft Teams. And we are also experimenting different mediums in order to keep the students' interest alive, because making use of one platform continuously leads to some monotony. So we are also using platforms like Jitsi, Adobe, Google, Blackboard Collaborate, Flint, Zoom, all these things we are using. And basically in India, the semester system is quite different from Europe. We usually operate from January to May and from again July to December. So by the time the lockdown came in place in India, most of the universities were about to complete their academics. So the major challenge was how to assess the students once they complete the academics. So we had explored many platforms to ensure that we are able to do fair assessment for all the students while we use online assessment. So we have subscribed one very good platform. The name of the platform is World Assessment Council. So it has a video proctoring mechanism which can detect AI-based cheatings, and it can detect rapid eye movements. It can detect if a person is opening several screens, if there is audio prompting. All these things are detected in this particular platform. So we have got a very good subscription of this platform. So we have initiated examination of more than 25,000 students in our university since last 2 weeks. And we have been doing it successfully, barring 1 or 2% students who are facing certain challenges to take up this platform. But we have ensured that we keep the student engaged even during the period of assessment, so that they effectively make use of the time which is available to them during this lockdown. Apart from this, what we have done is we have done extensive series of webinars with our partners across the world, with the industry mentors, to ensure that there is add-on knowledge provided to our students. And we have also approached many corporates in India as well as outside India to provide paid online internship to the students during this period, because this is the right time for students to do some online internships. And we have also collaborated with many of the industry partners to have virtual industry visits for our students. So while the person is working from floor in industry, we have been successful in showing our students that during this period of lockdown, how the industries are working, so we can give some practical knowledge to the students. Apart from that, just teaching can create a lot of boredom, I feel. So what we have done, we have tried to connect many celebrities from entertainment and various sectors by doing Instagram and live Facebook sessions with them. So there is some recreation for them, some extracurricular activity with them. So inviting some celebrities, inviting some sports personals. So that creates some buzz among the students and they come on one platform. So we have been doing that. And to get a cooperation from our industry partners, what we are trying to do is we are giving executive development programs free of cost from our end to the industry in return of getting paid online internship for our students. So I think that is working very well, that we are giving them education, in return we get internship for our students. And apart from that, as we understand, in the period of lockdown, it's very difficult to provide internships to the students. So what we had done, our library department had created an entire resource of online free courses which are made available during this period, like Harvard, Coursera. In India, we have an agency called Tata Steel. So there are many free courses they have made available for students to subscribe during this period. So what we have done, we have asked the students to identify at least one such course, which amounts to minimum 40 hours of contact period. And they are supposed to register themselves for this online course. And once they complete this online course, this will be an equivalent to internship, because we cannot make over for the time which is already lost. But in that time, we can do something which ensures learning for the student, something extra learning, which can add on value to their resume and to their career prospect. So we have made list of such courses, and we have delegated these courses to our students so that they remain engaged with this teaching learning process and they get some add-on knowledge. But what has not worked for us so far, I just listened to one of the experts, he was talking about online labs. I think that's one of the most difficult things to achieve. So we have been trying to use certain videos, certain virtual reality tools, but I don't think so there is any tool which can replace hands-on learning, which basically happens on labs. So that is the one most important missing thing when it comes to digital learning. And secondly, the social interaction. Basically, that is the main aspect of face-to-face teaching in the university, because you are exposed to diversity, you are exposed to different personalities. So that social interaction tends to develop you as a person. So I think that is missing big way currently in digital learning. And another very important issue is a kind of a boredom which comes with your continuous presence on your laptop and internet, that at one point of time you tend to lose your attention. So it's very difficult to monitor the quality of teaching learning process, both from the end of the teacher as well as students. So I think these are some principal things which did not work when it comes to digital learning, but there are certain things which also worked. I think this pretty much explains what we did and what did not work for us so far.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pedro. That was very interesting,
Yeah.
Especially the unexpected part that is involving celebrities was certainly something I would not have anticipated as an outcome of this webinar. One question though, do you feel that the competencies acquired by the students in an online placement, do you think they compare with a real real world placement? Obviously they have to be second best, or do you feel that you've been able to manage and provide the students with the right competencies, although those were online?
I'm not very sure whether to answer yes or no to this question, because outcome will only be known when we assess our students and when they come back to university and when we evaluate their competency and when they will be subjected to campus interviews and how they perform in terms of their job placements or their entrepreneurial initiatives. At that point of time, I think we'll be able to really know how this teaching learning process has been effective in ensuring the skills among the students. But definitely, digital learning can never be an alternative to face-to-face teaching, and this is one thing which we are forced upon to. So I think every teacher and every student is trying their best to make the best out of the current situation. But as I said, one of the principal limitation is the inability to check the quality of the teaching learning process when it comes to digital learning. You never know how the students are grasping, and you never know how the teachers are delivering. It's very difficult to assess. So my answer is no, it cannot replace the regular teaching, and it's very difficult to assess whether they have really gained the skill while in this digital learning. But as I said, we are forced into this situation, so we do not have option. We have to do the best with whatever tools we have.
That's right. Gino in the chat room says, are these courses, speaking of the online extra courses, are they accredited or recognized in any way as formal? I suppose the answer is they're not. And it's just non-formal, or understood as a supplement, I suppose. Or am I wrong?
Yeah, yes, I would consider something is better than nothing. And of course, we all universities are trying to teach whatever is there in our curriculum. But which universities will stand apart that will be able to give some add-on knowledge to their students, right? So everyone is teaching, everyone is taking their lectures, which is part of the curriculum. And as I understand, most of the universities, they have their curriculum at par when it comes to professional courses. But this option of taking up online courses, and when I talk about accreditation or credibility, we are trying to identify courses which are credible. Let's say Harvard University, it's a very credible name, and considering the current situation, they have made certain courses free of cost for the students. Like Coursera, it is also having some credibility. Like Tata is a very big company here in India, and it's a big credibility in India. So I think we have identified credible courses, and by doing these online courses, what students are doing, they are learning something extra beyond their academics. They are making use of their time. As we know, that's plenty of time available with the students. And if we mandate the students to go for this, they will definitely enroll for them. It will add value to their resume. It will be something different in comparison to other universities. And of course, in current scenario, it is very difficult for any university to ensure the students undergo internships or practical training. So there is no alternative. So as an alternative, we have identified, let us do this without adding any cost to the student, because we are not adding any cost, but we are giving them an opportunity that here you can see these are the courses, just select one course and try to complete them. Yeah.
It's very interesting, because by what you are saying really is you are adding diversity, diversity of delivery, of providers. You are saying that the university is in some ways able to accommodate those new providers, And in the end, students get a wider range of experience and probably a wider range of learning, and therefore more secure competencies, probably. That's extremely interesting, because I realize you see this crisis as a fantastic new provider of opportunities.
That's true.
Perhaps I'd like to turn to our panelists and perhaps react on Dr. Patel's position. Who would like to say a word, or perhaps no, it's fine. Barbara, perhaps? Go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, just thank you for those ideas. So I think you're right. You're correct by saying that students need diversity. If we all do the same things, it's a danger. And I think also it's not necessary to reinvent everything. There are very good online courses that exist. Why should we create the same ones and lose time doing it while we can create other things? And so maybe that's also an opportunity in EURASHE, maybe to think of uniting ourselves and initiating collaboration on maybe creating virtual courses in all the different degrees that we are offering. And I think that would be already a very good project for the future, knowing that teaching methods will never be the same again. So I think that's already one good point. So
yes, thank you, Barbara. I think Joseph wants to speak, and of course Minia as well. Joseph, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Just again, thank you, Dr. Patel. I mean, it's both amazing to be talking to India and to have India talk to us and to hear that shared experience. And it goes back to my point about the democratic nature of this. It's impacting us all, and sharing that learning, I think, is, thank you for that. The reason I raised my hand, Stefan, I just wanted to absolutely support what Barbara said. It's about sharing and cohesion and about learning. And I think there's a real role here for EURASHE. There's two things I'd like to make. One is Dr. Patel made a very good point about social interaction. And I think there's something about the nature of that element of our education and the educational experience that is very difficult to replace with the online piece. So I see the online piece, it's necessarily, the digital piece is going to have to be part of the solution here, and we know that. We know we're going to have to invest in that, and it is the reaction to the pandemic. But still, the nature of the education we provide is very much determined by the practical, hands-on, social piece of it. So I think that the other piece that you mentioned, Dr. Patel, which is something we're giving a lot of thought to now, is that quality piece. It's a different discussion. And we're working now with our quality agency, with all of our institutions, and indeed with our unions, thinking through that. The last bit, if I may, Stefan, just for one final supplementary piece, I'm watching the online comments, and I'm conscious that people are going to the trouble of putting those down. And I saw a very interesting one there about the question of mobility of students.
Yes, that's right.
20%. And that again goes back, I think, to something we touched upon earlier on. The real fear at the moment is, while we want to work cohesively and should work cohesively, I think that whole travel and mobility piece is going to be very, very difficult, certainly in the short term. So I don't have an answer to this. I know what the desire is, but and I know what the desire of students appears to be in this, but facilitating it is going to be a very, very difficult challenge. Thank you.
That's right. You're right. Mobility was certainly what we were going to speak about. And I think Vanessa de Biessanton from the Commission will be able to add a few comments on that. Before talking to you, Minia, I would like to share my own experience, actually. We've been asked by our network, our French network, plus both ministries of higher education and of foreign affairs, to recruit students, so that's incoming mobility to us, just as usual. And of course, those students won't be able to join us on the 1st of September when the classes resume or virtually resume. And so what we've been doing in the last week and a half, basically, is asking every institution, PHE institution in our network, that's 111 institutions, to contribute their own virtual classes. And that's basically several thousand lecturers and teachers contributing. And we are busy collecting, mapping resources so that when finally we are able to confirm to incoming students that they will be accepted in our institutions, we can send them the links to our classes, courses, and in fact programs. This is very exciting. It's very demanding. It's taking up hours and hours of our team's working time, but we hope it's going to be successful, and we hope international students do come to our institutions in the end. What we don't have answers for is outgoing mobility. That's certainly an issue that is very difficult for us to solve. But perhaps going back to you, Minya, so that we can have your point of view on what Dr. Patel said, and of course was contributed by Barbara and Joseph.
Thank you so much, Stefan. But very interesting your construction in your university with the invite the university in the network to contribute. Very interesting. We have a same discussion in Romania about the courses, the formal courses. We have some discussion. The students not very interesting about this. And we have discussion about the Romanian law because Gino mentioned, and you Stefan, response of the Gino question. What is the situation with accreditation? Is Romania is necessary to change the law because we don't have accreditation for these online courses. It's necessary to approve some article in the educational law in the parliament for change this, because it's not a problem for the moment. The discussion, repeat, is not for the moment, but it's for the future, because the students need the diploma, and the diploma is necessary to have we have a recognition of the diploma in all the world and so on. And this is the reason because we don't apply the formal courses. The example of the Dr. Patel explained us. But I agree totally with Dr. Patel about the social interaction and the diversity. It's necessary. It's very important. This, and agree also the response of the students. What the method for talk with the students, for talk not 1 second, 1 minute. Michna, you are here, and the students say yes, I'm not here, and talk with 10 students, 100 students. It's very difficult to talk like this. It's necessary another model, and this I agree totally. It's necessary to change something, have realized new methods for teaching and for monitoring the response of the students and the learning and the evaluation process. I return to 1 second about the students and the discussion with the students. We have first time in this crisis, I talk with my colleague from the Center of Counseling with the university, and I say it's necessary to put some lesson with students, prepare for the students a special lesson or talk with the students, because some students have problem, and after 2 weeks it's incredible message by students, because after 2 weeks stay home with family, with alone and so on. Many students have problems, and the activity of the center is very, very high in this counseling center. It's very high in this period, and it's also a problem for future. Last but not least, the internationalization. We have a special part of this webinar about internationalization, and all is change. It's necessary to adapt our university for this new in this new period, in new era after the corona. We talk with many international students. I repeat, we have a lot of international students in our university, and we agree in the board of university to help the students in this period and offer the bourses, the special scholarships, grants in this period, also in the summer, to stay with us and help the students in this period. And after, with this method, with this instrument, to attract many other students. And very important, it's necessary the online courses and online internship, online stages in other university, and maybe the Stefan instrument, the University of Stefan instrument is very good for our university.
Yes, then, well, thank you for contributing. Just as a matter of perhaps an anecdote, how many computers did you buy for the students, or your counseling department, or your social your student services? How many 4G connection cards did you buy? Was that part of the response you had to invest in, or was this reasonably fluid and you didn't have to intervene? Perhaps any of you, if you can contribute to this. It seems to be an anecdotic point of view, but of course computers and connection are basically the basics before we can even start discussing things. Joseph?
Yeah, I was taken by Dr. Patel's comment about the European-centric discussion, etc. And just to reassure Dr. Patel, we have the very same challenges. We don't have your size, scale, etc. But I can tell you in Ireland, which is fairly well equipped, we still have areas where connectivity is an issue. And I'm sure all of my colleagues here would say the very same. So to come back to your point, Stefan, we had big national discussions about network. We had discussions about spectrum, talking to the telcos. We got involved with all the telcos, brought them in, see what and they were very creative, I must say, in assisting us on that. And then we had a device issue. And, you know, if you are a family within, you know, with someone working at home or both parents working at home, you've got 4 students, you know, at second level, at third level, again, you can see the challenges. So we got donations of devices and we sent them out, and equally our institutions bought devices and gave them out. And we're looking into next year, and we're looking at things like banks of devices where they can be given to students, etc. So just to reassure you, Stefan, there is, you know, to give you an example, there is very active work going on in this.
That's right. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So one of the characteristics that we work really as a holistic, to provide a holistic response to this crisis, and no stone, has been left unturned really in this issue. Just one point before we go to Vanessa Debier-Santon. How can EURASHE help? Providing a seminar, providing a platform to exchange. Are there other ways we could contribute? Yes, Joseph, again.
Just again, sorry, I don't mean to be, but I'm sure other colleagues want to come in, I'll be brief. I think if we accept that investment in higher education over the next while, there's going to be a paradigm shift from investing in a stock of buildings into a digital infrastructure. I think there's a lot of merit in thinking holistically around this. And I think Barbara made an excellent point earlier on about how we might work together. So therefore, if we have digital languages that speak to each other, platforms that speak to each other, I'm not saying ultimately that you'll end up with a single wash. Who wants that? Who wants uniformity? Let's keep diversity, Dr. Patel, in everything. But at the same time, I do think there is merit in EURASHE being involved in discussions like that. Certainly at an Irish national level, they're discussions we're having at the moment.
Sorry, my sound. Devanshu, your turn, perhaps, take the floor.
Yeah, to see, Stephen, in English, it's well said that necessity is mother of all invention. So I would like to take that quote further. If necessity is mother of all invention, then cooperation is the father of all progression. Mm-hmm. So I think Eurasia has a very good opportunity to ensure that cooperation. I would like to give some examples, which I also spoke with our partners in Europe and other countries across the globe, that in digital learning, it's very easy to bring students on common platform. So if I talk about, let us say, a platform like Google Hangout, a professor can host 250 students at a time in a session. So I don't think so any professor would be having 250 simultaneous students in any of the session. And having a 250 session is not a trouble for any of the professor, I feel. So I have been speaking with many of the international officers with whom we are cooperating, that why don't we exchange slots of our professors wherein your students can come and join sessions of my professors, and my students can come in and join sessions of your professor. Of course, it can be pre-planned, but this is a good opportunity for students to exchange knowledge and to learn from international officers or international professors. So I think these are some of the very basic ideas which Eurasia can implement. And as I said, cooperation is father of all progression. So everyone has to offer something to each other. So if I talk about India, see, yoga invented from India, and yoga is very big, a big way promoted in India. So maybe this is a good opportunity to cooperate with universities like us to maybe implement yoga into lifestyle of the people in maybe in Europe, maybe in US and Canada, which is the need of the hour, because exercise and health is the only thing which is going to boost your immunity, and immunity is the only thing which is going to save you from this pandemic. So maybe cooperation in areas like this. Again, another very important thing is we have been doing clinical trials with Ayurveda medicines over here in India. And so far we have found very encouraging results in India with use of Ayurveda and homeopathy in boosting the immunity of the individuals. So maybe use of this kind of knowledge in our community can help each other. And this has also led to a lot of less cases in India. As we speak, we have just crossed 100,000 cases in India with less than 2% mortality. So of course, there is something which is working down the ground for us as far as this kind of medicines are concerned. And as initially spoke about in the panel discussion, we talk about research. Research has been grounded in most of the universities. So I think this is a good opportunity for us to collaborate on research front also, where every professor needs a boost to carry forward his or her research. So cooperation in research is also very important and can be done. So I think these are some of the few ideas which I wanted to give. Of course, a lot can be explored by different panelists and different members of Eurasia to ensure cooperation so that each one of us is benefited, I think.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Patel. That's yeah, cooperation is probably the name of the day. And on that score, I propose to give the floor to Madame Vanessa de Biais-Santon. I'm not sure, Vanessa, if you're able to listen to us. I saw you had an audio problem at some point. Oh, I can see you. Welcome.
No, I didn't have any problem. It was just a matter of giving me access, Stefan, but now your team managed, so that's fantastic.
Great, thank you. It's a pleasure to have you with us, Vanessa, and that you can spare the time. We've been discussing quite far and wide, but of course the question of cooperation is certainly dear to your heart, because this is what Europe does, doesn't it? And perhaps you can contribute to give your point of view on this, and probably how the Commission can contribute, help, provide ideas. We're not speaking only of money for once, Vanessa. We're speaking about ideas and how us all and EURASHE as an institution can provide input, support, cooperation. The outcome, the first outcome of this webinar is clearly that everybody is quite enthusiastically responding to the crisis. And we've identified many positive points. It's amazing. I'm quite surprised and enthusiastic about the outcomes of this webinar. So perhaps, shall I give you the floor, Vanessa, with thanks.
Yes, thanks a lot. With pleasure, Stefan. Maybe if you allow me, I would like to react maybe on some of the points that were said before, and especially to the questions that I have seen in the chat room, especially regarding Erasmus mobility. So I think it is worth it that I clarify some points here. So of course, the first challenge for us, once the universities had to close down physically the activities, has been to provide support to Erasmus Plus students together with the Erasmus Plus national agencies and all of you. And for that, we have given a maximum of flexibility with the implementation of the force majeure to make sure that the students can keep their grant, because even if they come back to their country, they still have costs associated to accommodation, etc. And make sure as well that the learning outcomes from this experience, even if they continued through virtual mode, being in the host or the sending country, that they can be fully recognized. So that was absolutely fundamental for us. And I know that the universities have been working very hard on that, and we would like to thank them very well. Then was the point mentioned by Emilia, I think, the importance of recognition, especially for those that will get graduated this year. And this is absolutely fundamental. And this is why we are working closely with the NARIC centers. We launched a survey with them recently. We will publish the results soon. And the objective is to really collectively together, and this is what European cooperation is about, to make sure that these students get not penalized, and that these diplomas, but also any experience that they have achieved this year, that they can use it for further learning, and that they can reach the higher level, no matter at which stage they are in higher education, that they are not penalized at all. Now, some of you mentioned what will happen for the next semester and the next academic year, because we know that not all universities will reopen the activities, face-to-face activities, as from September, maybe not even before January next year. So this is why yesterday, so it's fresh information, yesterday all Erasmus Plus national agencies received guidance note that we would encourage the continuity of all the international cooperation, including through student mobility. But this cooperation could start virtually as from September, and then be complemented with physical mobility as soon as it becomes possible and available. This is a message that we received both from the ministries that we are meeting regularly. Actually, we are organizing webinars with the members of the ministries every week, every 2 weeks, to exchange these practices, etc. And this is the feedback that's received from many higher education institutions as well. What the message that came back a lot and every time, this is clear that we cannot replace physical interaction with virtual. So our objective is definitely not to replace it, but rather to ensure and to avoid any disruption in this cooperation. So, yeah, you want to react already, Stéphane? Yeah, you can interrupt me, no problem.
It's just, as I said, I'm fairly enthusiastic because I see your experience. What you're saying, Vanessa, is that we tend to complain about administrative rigidity and stultifying limitations, but it's not happening. In fact, what you're saying is that you find in ministries and governments a good support and a willingness to make barriers move, basically.
Yes, exactly. A lot of willingness at all levels, I would say, at European level to really make the cooperation, the operation as easy as possible. And yesterday we sent these guidelines, and this morning we received feedback from Erasmus Plus national agencies replying, this is the first time we've seen that. Fantastic that the Commission managed to be so flexible. And we've seen that at ministerial level as well, where we've seen member states moving very quickly with new legislative documents facilitating and authorizing their higher education institutions to move ahead the rigid system that they had and be much more flexible. And we see it at higher education institution level together with the students as well. So I think this is in this time of crisis where we can see the added value of being European and being part of this European Union, and that is absolutely essential. Now maybe I can continue with some of the elements that you addressed before and the added value of this European cooperation. You mentioned that universities and higher education institutions have moved very quickly and massively to this online operation, and we have all been surprised how fast they managed to do that, thanks to the very hard work of staff, and we know that their work-life balance has not been easy, I would say, these last days, and maybe now starting the reopening, it will not be easier, maybe even more difficult than the closing, actually, organizing it. So this should be praised. But of course, this has been in many instances an ad hoc response to a crisis. And now, as the panelist rightly mentioned before, we need to address the quality and the sustainability if it continues to last for quite a time. So what can be done, and how can we support higher education institutions for that? Of course, we have funded for many years Erasmus Plus projects that are already cooperating, working together on that. So this is why we have, through our Erasmus Plus website, shared the links to all those interesting Erasmus Plus projects, providing links or guidelines or toolkits and material for the teachers. We have shared it on this web page, and do not hesitate to come back to us. I'm sure we are not exhaustive at all, so we're happy to complement it. And this has been, we are not the only one of having done that, obviously. It has been done by many different university networks, which is excellent. The more the better, the more we share, the better. Now, we were very happy to see that we had an Erasmus Plus call for strategic partnerships. The deadline was end of April. We were very happy to see that actually the number of applications has increased by 26%. Despite the difficulties that we all know with the crisis situation. So we had extended the deadline, and we have seen the benefits from that, so we can be very pleased. Half of them, without any surprise, address the digital gap and the quality of teaching and learning, and the need for the training of staff in these new pedagogies, because this is very important. Making it online requires different pedagogies than face-to-face, and not everybody is prepared for that, which is absolutely normal. But that means that we need to invest more in that. So now, actually, the Erasmus Plus national agencies will have the flexibility to manage their budget between international mobility and strategic partnerships, so they will have that flexibility, you know, to best use the budget. And we are now exploring the possibility to launch possibly an additional call this autumn, because we see that there is, and you have again reminded us in this panel, this webinar, about the urgent need to address this. And this is what our Commissioner Maria Gabriel announced yesterday to the education ministers, who are now meeting informally much more often than before. And we see the added value of this cooperation and exchanging practices, for example, as well on online assessment. You mentioned it. Many universities in different member states have moved to online assessment and only keep the face-to-face for, as you said, what is more practical lab work. So a lot of exchanges have been happening there, and now the discussions that we're having with all of them in the ministries is to ensure flexibility in the enrollment dates for this next semester. It's absolutely, we know that in many countries these final exams have been postponed sometimes, or sometimes it has just been cancelled, and they use the work that has been done during the year. So different approaches depending on the countries, but also in view of the autonomy of the higher education institutions and their teachers. But what is absolutely essential, and it has been called from our commissioner to all education ministers, is to really ensure flexibility so that the students are not penalized, taking into account that in some countries the examinations had some delays, and that of course the results and the certifications will have delays before they can be submitted to their partner universities. So this is why now we are exchanging between the countries these dates, these enrollment dates, so that all of them can take into account and be as flexible as possible. And of course, now all this needs to be digested so that we can reflect it in the European communications that will come in the coming months. One will be to prepare a digital education action plan, well, to review it. It already existed, but we're going to review it. And of course, we will reflect on what has happened and what we can anticipate will happen further. And this will be reflected as well in the European education area communication. So both of them coming in the coming months. What is really important, and this was again a very important message from our commissioner, is that we want to consult largely and to reach out to all parts of society. So even if there have been already a lot of consultations ongoing on these two consultations, we're going to launch in the coming weeks an even broader consultation, because it's important to listen to the teachers, to the parents, to the pupils, how they have dealt with this situation, taking into account as well the digital divide and the importance of ensuring equity. And it was interesting when your previous question, Stefan, on how much you invested basically to address this issue of the students not necessarily being equipped or having difficulties to access Wi-Fi, etc. So digital, in need of investment in digital infrastructure. But also another very important challenge as well, and that we would like to hear of, is the mental health and the well-being. We have listened to the students. It has been quite stressful for many of them, this experience, and it's important to listen to that and see what we can do in the future. So this is one more or less in a nutshell. I wanted to say one more element, maybe that is important, and then I will stop there and listen to you. Is on the 26th of May, we're going to start a working group on micro-credentials. Why? Because we see, and as a recovery plan for the economy, we see that there will be more and more needs for upskilling and reskilling for the large population, and that there will be a growing role for higher education institutions to provide these continuous learning opportunities, meaning on top of what they already do, So it's not to replace what they do and to replace from a degree, not at all, but as a complement to provide short learning opportunities, short courses, to provide just-in-time development skills for this for this population, and that could lead to micro-credentials. So this is why we want to accelerate this work, and the EURASHE network will be represented in this work as well, on top of all experts from all the different countries. And the objective from this expert group is to come up with a common definition on these micro-credentials and an action plan at European level, national level, institutional level, to facilitate not only the take-up and development of such short courses, but also how to validate them, recognize them, and ensure their quality.
Thank you, Vanessa. That was fantastically interesting. And just to take up your last subject, tomorrow we will be holding a webinar on micro-credentials, because you're right. When you come to think of it, what are micro-credentials? Well, they are based on adapting our curricula and responding to the needs of of the market, of the professionals out there, and of course our students' need. So certainly we will be responding and contributing to this. On a previous subject that you broached was the idea of being able to capitalize, perhaps to map, to identify, and then to capitalize on the lessons of the period. This is just really being done, but definitely you can count, and everybody here can count on EURASHE to get involved into that and mobilize everyone. I'm afraid we are at the end of our seminar. I would like really to thank everyone who contributed, including the people in the chat room. I hope we've given as large and wide an insight as possible. Of course, we haven't answered all the questions. One of the questions that we need to address probably is the question of training the trainers. And providing more opportunity to learn and adapt for our staff, teachers and lecturers. But certainly we will be back on that score and many others. So thank you very much from us here at EURASHE, and hope to see you soon. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you all.
Thank you.